Welcome to TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we're going to continue where we left off last week in our overview of menu structure and customization. And we're going to extend that to your point of sale system. We're going to explore the existing menus, look at easy ways of customizing them, and help you get the best experience possible when you're working face-to-face with your customers. As always, if you have any questions along the way, I will be monitoring those questions and I will do my best to answer them as I see them come in. We'll hopefully have some time at the end for some Q&A, but let's go ahead and jump into my screen. So if you were in attendance last week, or if you had a chance to check out the webinar recording from last week, you might recognize that I've got my main menu here for touchscreen operations. But what we're going to do is we're going to go back to where we were to customize these menus. We're going to go into maintenance. We are going to go into general, and we're going to take a look at the point of sale menus this time. So we looked at touchscreen menus last time. This week, we're looking at point of sale menus, and it's going to be more of the same, except there's a few key adds to the point of sale that I want to make sure makes sense for you. So you have a lot of the same structure. You've got the ability to look at all the different menus over here on the right, and AIM already comes with a default point of sale menu system for you to get you started. It should look very similar to this, where you've got some overlay buttons of the green buttons on the top, these orange buttons on the side, some peach colored buttons for different modes. We'll talk about that in a second. Some drill down menus for selling SKUs and non-inventory items and going into other sections. And then some quick buttons for things like trade-ins and special orders and notes and things of that nature. So with point of sale menus, there's a lot more functionality with the functions of these buttons. So you'll notice if I go in and set change function, just like we did last time, you've got button types, and there's more button types now with point of sale than there were with just the regular touchscreen menus, the back office menus. You still have options like jumping. You can jump to specific menus. You can jump back and forth and home, and you can still launch forms and reports right from within point of sale now. So those of you who are coming from version 11 and older, you now have the ability to have buttons right in point of sale for launching things that might not be normally considered point of sale related, like daily reports or having a time clock button right there on the main point of sale screen and things of that nature. So there's a lot more functionality with point of sale now than there ever was before. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. We don't have nearly the time for that, but I'm just going to point out a few key ones. So if you would like to have a button that when you click on that button, it sells a SKU out of your inventory, you have a SKU button. And when you select that SKU button type, it will ask you what SKU are you linking that to. You can either type in the SKU, you can scan the SKU with a barcode scanner, or as always, you can press F6 and search for that SKU by description and pull that in. So just really quickly, I'll search for my good old RT14, and there's my premium valve oil. I will select that to pull that in. And then really, I don't have to do anything else. I could click OK, and you can see it will now say that that's going to be premium valve oil, where my trade-in option used to be. Now, you can always set the caption of whatever you would like it to be. You might notice by default, it goes with whatever just basically the name of the item is, the description. Now, let's say you wanted to sell a non-inventory item like a shipping charge or a gift certificate or anything like that. If we go back to the functions, just like we have for SKU, you have an option for non-inventory categories. So for those of you who attended my non-inventory category webinar, hopefully this is fairly self-explanatory. Non-inventory things are things that you can sell that you don't run out of. You don't have a SKU for them. You just have a category and maybe a subcategory. So when you make that selection, you'll see it will ask us for the category that we want to sell. Let's say this is going to be, let's say this is going to be a service part. Why not? And then we don't have any subcategories for that. If I'd like, I can make this be a specific service part. I'm not going to track that as a part in the system, but I can give it a specific name like a, let's call it a widget. I can put that into the description, and then that will be what will show on the listing of the item within the sale. And then I can put in a specific price for it. Let's say it's $5.95. If you link this to a subcategory that has a price, it will pull that price in. So I just wanted to make sure that that is clear. Again, for those of you who attended that and know all about that. If you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do so. But then at this point, I can go ahead and click OK, and you'll see it's now showing a widget. Of course, I can make that button say whatever I want it to say by editing the caption either here or here. So I can type whatever I want in there, and that's what the button will say versus what will print on the receipt. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I wanted to point those two specific functions out for point of sale, because usually when we're talking about point of sale, we are talking about selling things. So those are going to be your most common things. Next week, when we look into just point of sale usage overall, we'll take a look at how you don't necessarily have to have buttons for all of your items. We'll talk about the ease of scanning anything that's barcoded and things of that nature. Now, just to kind of get back to the existing menu structure. If you might recall, again, if you were in attendance last week, if not, there are special menus called overlays that are always on screen. So these kind of buttons right now that are in the middle of the menu are all linked to the start menu. But you'll notice if I click to, say, the contract menu, these green buttons and these orange buttons are always on screen. They are part of what's called an overlay. And with the point of sale, you not only have a main overlay, which has these buttons on the top and left, as well as the background. I've just got a plain white background on this. You can see there's no image or anything associated with it. But you also have a series of special overlays for the different modes of point of sale. If you go back to the start menu, these peach colored buttons up here indicate the ability to do different kinds of modes. Some of these may make sense for you, like layaway mode or proposal mode or loaner mode. Basically, when you click into a different mode within point of sale, that mode will determine what happens with the items being scanned into it. So when you're in a layaway mode, things aren't going to be sold outright. Instead, you're going to typically take like a down payment on it. That's going to then be an open balance for the customer to pay off over time. But with each of those modes, you have the ability to have a special overlay. So for example, with the layaway mode and its accompanying overlay, I still have all of my normal buttons. You can see it's actually not even letting me click on those because those are part of the main overlay, which is always active. But there are two new buttons down here. One that, when I look at its function, takes me to the ability to change the paid in full date. So every layaway has a default number of days ahead of the current day to pay it off by. And by having this button set up, this allows me to click on that to change the date it needs to be paid off by. Likewise, there's another button that allows me to specify the amount of the down payment I'm taking. So every mode has an accompanying overlay, which can have special buttons that are in play when you are within that mode. The short-term rental overlay has actually a button which takes you to a further menu called short-term rental functions. We can see that in this case, that's actually jumping to a menu. So with that actually lets us go to a special menu, which again only needs to be used in the event that we're doing a short-term rental. And you can see there's all different kinds of things on here, like changing the pickup day and return day and specifying some kind of deposit or maybe like a security deposit on it, just all different kinds of things. So again, I want to make sure that makes sense, this whole concept of overlays that come into play when a specific type of mode is activated. You can specify if you need to make any changes to these. You'll notice that, like, for example, when I click on the proposal overlay, which again has its own special buttons, this is linked via this overlay option here that says this is the proposal mode overlay versus, for example, the main overlay, which is always an overlay. So the main overlay is always activated when you're in point of sale. These other ones are only when you're in a certain type of mode. Now, what do we mean by modes? Let's go back to the start menu again. And you can see when I click and look on one of these buttons, these peach colored buttons, this has, again, a special type of button type. In this case, it's a transaction mode. So you have pretty much every mode already in play up there at the top. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different modes. So you don't really have to do a whole lot of setup when it comes to activating these. They're already all going to be there. If by chance there are certain options on here that you simply don't offer, what you can do to simplify your life for both you, your customers, and your staff is you can right-click and delete those modes. If you don't offer short-term rentals, simply delete that button. You'll never see anything relating to short-term rentals on your main screen or anything like that. So you simply say, are you sure? Boom, the button goes away. Now, of course, I'm going to hit cancel on that because I want that button back if there's ever any questions on it during the purposes of this webinar. But again, I want to make sure that makes sense. Now, if you're coming from version 11 or older, and you might recall on our point of sale screen, there were a series of hard-coded buttons. They were always there for the purposes of, let's say, changing dates or changing employees or doing discounts or all these different kinds of things. These are now, for the most part, special menus over on the left. There's a function menu, there's a discounts menu, there's the ability to delete line items. These are all things that have right-click functionality associated with them. So let's go to the overlay, and I want to just point some of these things out. Most of these are going to be jumping to different menus. So like when I click on this wrench here, this is going to take me to a functions menu. And most of your main functions are on this first function menu, things like changing the tax details or splitting the salesperson percentages for commission purposes, things of that nature. If you would like to have some of these functions on the main screen, by all means, what you can do is you can right-click and copy or multi-copy those buttons, and then you can go back to the start menu and paste those functions so that you have them right there, just a click away without having to go into different menus. Same thing for your discounts. There is a discounts menu, which again, by default, it has all of the different methods in which you can do discounts. There's the standard ones like amounts or percentages off either the current item that's already in the sale or the next item that you're about to scan. You can do blanket discounts in percentage and amount form on everything that's been added to the transaction so far. You can also do back into totals. The whole idea of a back into total is it lets you specify the end amount so that you can say, I need this invoice to come out to this amount, and it can go ahead and figure it all out to get you to that exact amount. Now with version 12, you have the ability to set specific buttons for specific discounts. So you no longer have to remember that, let's say, your VIP customer membership discount, whatever it is 10% off. You could have a button on screen that says VIP discount, and basically when it does that, it'll add 10% off to the sale. How do you do that? You look at its function. So you'll notice when I look at the button type of discount, it'll ask me what the discount type is. But then depending on the discount type, it might also ask you for the amount associated with that. If this is left 0, you'll want to make sure this is checkmarked as prompting for the discount. But if you want this to be a specific value, in the case of this percentage, this would be the actual percentage. I'd put that in as, let's say, 10%. I would not prompt for discount. And instead of this saying blanket discount percentage, I might call this VIP member discount. And then when I click on this at point of sale, it'll do a 10% discount on the sale without me having to remember that it's a 10% discount. So a lot of functionality like that is available here in version 12 for these different functions. So I encourage you to explore those options and check them out and set these up so that it just makes it that much easier for you and your staff at the time of the sale. Now, another key function of version 12's point of sale, in contrast to version 11 and older, is every time you go to take payments, you can reference a payment menu. So before in version 11, again, for those of you who are coming from that, I see a fair number of you here who are in attendance that are coming from older versions. You might recall that whenever you were ready to make the sale, you would click save to save the point of sale, and it would pop up a payment screen. It'll be very similar to that now in version 12, except when you click the option to tender, it'll take you either to this payment menu in the case that the customer owes you money, or it will take you to a return menu in the case that you owe the customer money. Say, for example, if you're doing a merchandise return, you can do that now within point of sale, and you just need to give that payment back to the customer. You now have the ability to do that, and there's a special return menu that it will take you to when you click tender to take you right to those options. That being said, you don't necessarily have to have a dedicated payment menu if the majority of the time you are taking, let's say, a credit card payment. You can copy those credit card options, or basically whatever your most common payment methods are. Let's say Visa and cash. I'm going to multi-copy those. We can go back to the start menu and we can paste those. Let's do the multi-paste. There we go. We can paste those right to the main screen. So then you don't have to go to a tender menu. They can be right there at a click away on the main screen. So I'll just put those right there. Let's go ahead and save that just so you can kind of be cognizant of that. We can see that in a few minutes here when I go to do a test transaction. Last thing, getting into those payment menu options, for each payment method, if we take a look at the functionality, it's going to reference a payment category. Every payment method will have a payment category set up in your ledger maintenance area. And then it will ask you basically, do you want this to be a certain amount? Would you like it to prompt for a total or default to the total? Would you like it to prompt for a reference number? Some of these are set up by default, like in, for example, this cash payment, it's going to basically just prompt for the total and it will default to exact change. Others, like the check option, if we take a look at its function, it's not going to prompt for the total, it will default to the total. So it's assuming that the customer is making the checkout for exact payment, and it will also prompt for a reference number. Now, a reference number in this case is where you can put in the check number so that you can easily reference that check should it come back as a bad check. And then you can always look it up by that reference, find out who it was for and what it bought, so that you can reach out to them and say, hey, you owe us money in addition to a $20 bad check fee or whatever you might charge. Just kind of continuing that option, let's look at a few more for the pre-auth methods of Visa, MasterCard, Amex, etc. Again, by default, it's going to assume exact payment. So you'll see this is all set to default to total. It's not prompting for a total. It's not prompting for a reference number. It's just assuming if I click that, it's for the exact amount that I ran through an external credit card machine. Those of you who are using an integrated credit card merchant like TSYS or OpenEdge or WorldPay, when you set up those services, a representative will be helping you, if not already to do so, to set up simply one button that simply says authorize card, and then all you have to do is click on that, and then the credit card itself will go through the portal of that merchant. You don't have to specify that it's a Visa or an American Express. It'll get that information when you run the card through its services. These only really ever be used if you are using an external credit card machine not connected right into AIM. Now, that being said, the whole reason for this discussion is, do you want these to stay as is, or would you rather that it ask for and confirm the amount? So in those cases, you may want to uncheck the option for default to total. You may want it to prompt for that. So instead of defaulting to exact change, you might want to prompt for it, have it put in the amount. You may want to check mark both of them like it was in the cash option, so it will default to exact change, and then you can override it if necessary. But I don't want you to also feel like you have to do this in the event that you are taking an inexact amount. You can override that at point of sale, and we will be taking a look at that next Tuesday. But I just wanted to make sure that that made sense. So those are some of the key functions here. The main thing is to be cognizant of the fact that there are all these different kinds of menus now in point of sale with the overlays, the different function menus, and you can copy and paste these buttons to your main screen as necessary. And once it's all set up, the whole idea really with the start menu here of the main screen is that you've got all of the things you might need for the majority of your transactions just a click away with all those functions. So that way, when you're in point of sale, you can just go boom, 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 and take the payment from the customer and be good to go for the next sale. Now, just to kind of hopefully without let's say reiterating what I've already talked about, if you were not in attendance last week for the touchscreen menu functionality, I do want to talk about situations where maybe you want to have one point of sale screen up at one computer, and you want to have a different point of sale screen up at a different computer. And that's where different menus and different menu systems potentially can come into play. So let's close out of here. Let's talk a little bit about that. If we take a look in the workstation settings of our computers, every station has a point of sale tab that references a home menu. Now that home menu is the main screen that shows up when you're at point of sale on that computer terminal. So if this station 2, let's say for example, is my main point of sale terminal, and I just want to have all those functions available to me, I can use that start menu with all of its modes, all of its options, and so forth. But let's say I have a different computer terminal, let's say a hypothetical station 3, that maybe is more of a back office computer. It doesn't have a cash drawer connected to it. I don't want to have certain payment methods associated with it. Maybe I don't even want to have all those different modes associated with it. I can set up different menus and then link that different menu as the home menu for that computer so that it starts at a different screen. It doesn't have to start at this start menu. Let me give an example. I'm going to leave this as is for right now, and I'm going to hop into a quick sale. And you'll see it starts me off just like we saw with the mode buttons, the teal and blue buttons, those two quick links that I had for the cash and Visa MasterCard buttons. But let's say that I have a computer terminal that is devoted 100% to short-term rentals, and I basically want to have that function right on the main screen. So what I could do is, if I go back to the point of sale menu setup, I could have clicked right there too, but either way, let's say that I want to have this short-term rental function as the main menu for that computer. So what I could do is back in the workstation settings, I'll just go right there. And let's pretend that it's station 2, since I'm at that station. I can come here and I can change this home menu from the start menu to the short-term rental functions. When I click save and then hop into quick sale, you'll see it starts me on that menu instead. So basically you can have different menus pointing to different things depending on what computer you're at. You can also do that for your individual employees. So in your employee setup underneath your admin menu, not only can you have override menus for your normal touchscreen menus like we talked about last week, but you can have different point of sale menus as start menu overrides when you're within point of sale, both for point of sale as well as your payment and return menus. So again, I just wanted to make sure that that made sense. There is a couple of questions coming in here. Stephanie is asking, what is the difference between payment auth and payment category? And I am glad that you asked that, Stephanie. So again, I think I mentioned it if and when you're setting up with those credit card merchants, they will be helping you set up a payment method called authorize card. Let's actually just switch this back to the start menu. In fact, let me do this. Let's go back to the payment menu. So all these buttons here are what are called payment category options. Now, in the event that you are setting up a button that when you click it, it will work to authorize a card, that is the purpose of the payment auth option. You'll notice when we select that, the option to select a particular category goes away. It still leaves the option of doing a specific amount if you so desire. Usually you wouldn't be doing that, but by choosing the payment auth option, it then triggers that merchant's gateway to pop up so that you can then swipe the card or tap the card or use the card that you might have on file for the customer, but it will trigger an authorization of the customer's card at that time. So hopefully that makes sense. Thank you so much for the question, Stephanie. You have a follow-up question there apparently that says we've been having off and on issues with credit cards. Could it be the fact that it was set up as payment auth? And I doubt that that's the case. In order for it to actually trigger a credit card transaction through your merchant, it would need to be an auth type option. So I don't think that would be the case. Hopefully you've been working with our technical support staff to see if we can get whatever issues you're having rectified for you. So if you haven't done so, I would definitely encourage you to do that. I'm sure that you have. I know that you're very diligent about working with our support team, which we certainly do appreciate. So, but yeah, any other questions, definitely let me know. I do want to talk a little bit about the flow, which we will get more into detail with next week. So let me do this. I'm actually just going to switch back to the workstations. I'm going to switch that back to the normal start menu here, just so that we have access to that. And normally when we would go into either a quick sale or a point of sale, we would make our sales here. You'll see the cursor starts out down here in the corner. I'm going to go ahead and sell a bottle of premium valve oil. It comes up as $3.95 plus $2.37 in tax, so $6.32 total. I then will want to take payment on that. Now, normally I could click the tender button, and there's options up here to take whole dollar amounts. Let's say I take $7 in cash. I could click the 5 and the 1 button twice. You'll see it puts $7 in cash, shows me 68 cents in change. Let's go ahead and remove that. I'm going to delete that payment line. I could also click the cash button, so you can see it comes up as $6.32. By default, that takes that payment. Notice how when I take a payment, when it's paid in full, this changes to say finalize. So at this point, if I were to click that, that would close out the sale. But I want to show one other thing here because some of you may find this super handy. As I said, you no longer have to have these payment methods relegated to an actual payment screen. You can have them right here on the main menu. And you'll notice if I click cash and take payment, I don't have to worry about clicking to a tender and taking a payment. I could have a quick button right there to take that payment, and that way it helps to speed up that flow so I don't have to jump to different menus. And that's really the name of the game with version 12 is you can have more than your usual setup on these main menus. Ideally, you're going to have this very specific and efficient. So you've got just your main functions here that you use 99% of the day. But for that extra 1%, you've got your side menus for tenders and functions and discounts and all different sorts of menus and things like that. So hopefully that makes sense. We will be doing more webinars in the future that get into some specific menu strategies. So that that way, hopefully, what I'm really looking to do is have something where maybe we can have some people maybe share some of their existing menu structures and strategies, so that way we can maybe even have like a round robin type setup and have it more of a customer experience and things of that nature. But anyway. Again, look for that on our upcoming webinars at some point here in the future. Next week, we will be doing a closer look into the normal point of sale flow in version 12 with those different modes, how you can combine multiple of them at one time. And then I know we're getting into some new topics in for the month of March. We have the March schedule up on the Go To Stage TriTech University page, so definitely check those out. Register for any of those that you're interested in. Keep checking back to that page for more webinars into the upcoming months. I usually try and have that 1 month in advance. So as we get to the end of February here, I'll be posting April's webinar schedule up on that page. Definitely check that out. If you have any webinar suggestions, and I know some of you have been sending those to me, and I super appreciate that. I will be definitely doing some of your suggestions here as I can work them into the schedule. But definitely drop me a line at training@tritechretail.com, because I wouldn't be doing these just for my benefit. I want these to be helpful to you. So anything that we can do, definitely let us know. And if there's no other questions, we will convene for the day. Thank you so much for your attendance and your attention. My name's Bill Steppen, and we'll see you next week. Take care.